Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Willys and Jeep crankshafts. Here's a bunch of early crankshafts here, and on the bench I just got off Scott's crankshaft off the bench. It's mounted in here and we're going to try and polish this guy up. I just tested out the #1 main bearing. It's true to size. I'm using the Scotch Brite belt, and I was able to find in my pile of stuff a 1/1000 bearing for this back. Remember, this was from the factory, ground short, but I'm hoping to get that polished up. I'll measure everything. If it doesn't work, we'll get to grinding it, but we're going to try and polish that up. But in the meantime, let's talk about some cranks. Okay, here is a crankshaft out of a MB engine. You see it has the counterweights cast in it, right here all the way down. This crankshaft weighs 41.5 pounds. I'm going to try and grind this one. Let me see what kind of notes I left myself. I'm going to try and grind it 30 on the mains and 20 on the rods. That's kind of messed up, but we'll try and get that there. There are numbers in these cranks and stuff, but if you don't have a crank book, you're not going to know what they mean. But this is the first generation crankshaft. Has the cast counterweights, and it does have a way to oil the timing chain. Let me try and flip this over for you. Hang in there. Okay, there is the oil squirt hole. Goes through your gear. That's what the gear would look like. Goes through your gear and lubricates the chain. Okay, so that's on the early one. Here is another early crank. You'll see that the counterweights are quite a bit different. This crank weighs 37 pounds. This is out of an industrial engine. And it's the lightest crank of all, and you'll find the lightest cranks in the industrial engines. And this one, I'll try and zoom you in here. You see that screw right there where the rear main seal should be? Okay, well, as the engine is rotating, that screw catches the oil and pushes it back toward the inside of the engine. It was not a great setup. You know, when they first came out with it, it wasn't great, but they used it in industrial engines because they weren't going up and down hills, and they were usually just flat on a floor, and they thought they were going to get away with that particular design, and it doesn't work real well. What I can say is, don't take one of these industrial cranks, put it in a early L or F head, and think that you're going to seal. As soon as you go up a hill or down, you're going to have a mess of oil coming out the back of your engine. But it's not a real common crank, but I just wanted to show it. And again, I'm trying to find a squirt hole on this one. Hang in there. This one lubes through the gear. Oops, there it is. I'll try and show you that. See that little pea hole right there? That's where the oil under pressure comes out, lubricates the gear and the chain. And that's critical for a chain drive engine. Now we got some cranks here that I've been busy grinding. This one was in real tough shape. The mains are 60, the rods are 40. Yeah, I do have 60 bearings. I've got 70s actually for mains. I've never had to go to a 70, but I do have some bearings left. This one was a remarkable shape, 1010, and this one wasn't too bad a shape either at 2020. Okay, so you're going to jump from a 41.5 pound crank, the oddball's the 37. You're going to go right up to 47 pounds. That crankshaft weighs 47, that one weighs 47, and that one weighs 47. So a good jump from your cast-in counterweights. These counterweights are bolted on and then welded, and when it's balanced you can see they remove weight here and here and on all the counterweights. Now this crankshaft has the same type of oiling system as the early chain drives. See that little groove around there? Hope you can see that. Hope the light's okay. That little groove around there, that goes all the way through and will lubricate a chain drive setup. When you put a regular gear setup on there, the oil, it doesn't go through, but with a chain setup it will. So if you want a little bit more low-end power out of your MB, this is a fantastic crankshaft to put in an MB or a GPW, because you pick up another what, 5.5, 6 pounds, and you can actually, you'll feel that, you know, if you switch from one crank to another, you actually feel that. So these cranks are going to have a groove as the original guys, and then your most standard crank is this guy right here with the smooth snout, and this one does not lubricate a chain drive engine. So don't put this in if you have a chain drive engine. You won't get the lubrication you need. You can get a little bit from your original canister full flow oil filter, but it's not like a nice pressure lube. So be conscious if you have an oiling system on your crankshaft for a chain drive motor. Okay, so this one does not. You can see there's no groove in here. Same on this one. It does not. And these cranks are all ready to go into engines I'm rebuilding, and except for this industrial one. Like I say, you don't see those too often, and if you see that screw type rear main, run from that. That's terrible. So with the new gasket system from Best Gasket, the crankshaft seal diameter, as you can see, this one I had to weld and grind, and that one I welded and ground. So that's 2" 310, 2" 310. That's the target number you're shooting for on the new seals, and that will work fantastic. I've had plenty of them. The seals have been fixed. Everything works great, so don't worry about that. 2" 310 is your number. I do get a lot of questions on that. The seals are fixed, and they work properly with the factory crank. Now all of these cranks, you're going to hold your flywheel on with these little tapered pins. Okay, they go right in there, and then your flywheel registers right on that. It holds everything super smooth. There are millions of these out there, and not a real problem. They've worked fine. But if you do get into trouble, and you'll see this in a service manual, this is a shoulder bolt that they wanted dealers to install if this hole got messed up, or if the crank hole or the flywheel hole. So if that crank hole got wallowed out or the flywheel got messed up, drill and ream and put that guy in there, and that is a good fix. I had to do that in Larry's engine, and we'll go over and take a look at that next. Okay, here's Larry's flywheel, and basically you bolt a flywheel to your crank, drill and ream through the flywheel and the crankshaft, and that will fit. Obviously it goes the other way, but it will fit nice and snug in that hole. And this is something you have to plan for when your crankshaft is out. There you can see the shoulder bolt there and there with new hardware for his flywheel. So if your crank or your flywheel is messed up, don't throw it away. These are available through a couple different retailers, and you know, it's a good fix. So if your pins are loose or you have any question if your flywheel is going to stay on there nice and secure, absolutely get these shoulder bolts and it'll work perfect for you. Okay guys, back to Scott's crankshaft. You can see this is an 83 CJ8 Scrambler. 1, 2, 3, 4 counterweight crank. These spin up real fast. You get a little bit more RPM out of these guys, and they do spin up real fast. And it's not a bad crank. Lots and lots and lots of vehicles out there, the 258s, have this crank. And it's a strong crank, and with 7 main bearing journals, super rigid, and normally you don't have trouble with these guys. So I didn't get a chance to throw this one on the scale, but we'll go take a look at the crank that I like to use sometimes, and we'll throw that on the scale to see what it is. Okay guys, here's my favorite crank out of the 232 and 258 engine. Let's see what this guy weighs. Hang in there, let me focus you in there. That is a 67.5 pound crank. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 counterweight crank. That is good when you want some low-end torque, and you get a little bit more torque and a little bit more rotational mass out of these guys. I like the 12 counterweight crank, but this one does have a problem, and I'll show you what happened with this one next. Okay guys, here is the thrust surface on this crankshaft. I think you can see it's probably, well, it's got to be 100 thousandths deep. It's got to be probably almost an 1/8 inch deep, I would imagine, on that. That crank was just shucking back and forth inside that engine. This is the third one I got like this, and since I got the crank machine, I didn't realize it was going to be so many people needing cranks ground. I'm trying not to do a lot of cranks because I'm trying to get engines out. But a few guys have snuck in here and with problems and stuff, and I'm doing a lot of cranks lately, and you know, still looking for somebody to help out with that. Anybody who wants to be a crank grinder, you let me know. I'll put you right to work. But this is what happens. The guy put a super heavy duty clutch on this one. You almost couldn't push the clutch down. It's mechanical linkage, and it was a super heavy clutch, and it put a lot of pressure on this. Just smashed this crank right through the thrust surface. So that seems to be what's going on with a lot of cranks. Problem is, a lot of guys are putting these massive clutches and stuff on trucks, and they got hydraulic clutches, and they can't actually feel what they're doing to their crankshafts. I've gotten a bunch of Cummins cranks in, guys putting these huge clutches on there, and when they push that pedal down, they're just pushing that crankshaft and wearing out the thrust surface. Now this is a cast iron crank, and it's so deep, I don't know if I'm going to fix this one or not. And some cast iron ones I fix and some I don't, and this one is so deep, and I have to put a lot of heat into that, and I don't know how twisted it's going to get or whatever. But guys, please be careful. Don't put more clutch than you need, because this is what happens, especially on these 258s. This seems to be I don't know, seems to be an epidemic with these 258s and guys with super crazy clutches on them, and this is what happens. So match your clutch to what you're doing. If you're just driving around, you don't need a crazy clutch, and be a lot easier on your leg. So just be careful out there. Just be conscious and let your mind think about what's happening when you put all that pressure on that pedal. Sometimes it just wears the crank out. Okay guys, here is a 4 counterweight crank, and this is one I'm doing for an 86 258. I just want to show you the weight difference between the 4 and the 12. Just gonna tickle 46 pounds. And let me give you a look at the thrust surface when it's in good shape. How nice that is. So I got this one ground. It's just, I had it in a bag. I just wanted to get out and show you the weight difference. So 46 to 67, you can see the difference there. So match your crankshaft again to the to what you're doing. Do you want torque or do you want top end speed? And then match your crank to it. Okay guys, I hope this gives you an understanding of crankshafts, how things get lubed, how flywheels get attached, and the different kinds of cranks. You're going to find that MB style and the MB, GPW, CJ8. Later on, they went with this guy, late, very, very late, 2A, 3A, 3B, CJ5. Now I've seen this style with the oiler in the front in very late CJ5s as well. So this crankshaft was in and out of production for quite a long time. This is the one 99% of the time you're going to find in all later vehicles. F heads, L heads, and I know we beat it to death, but I get so many questions about crankshafts, and I hope I covered all the questions that I get. I hope you guys have a better understanding of these crankshafts, and they're getting harder to find, so you have to save them when you can. Like I say, this one's 60 on the mains and 40 on the rods, so you got to save what you can, because they're just not out there. Guys are scrapping these engines faster than you can believe, so pretty soon crankshafts are going to be terribly hard to get. So try and save every one you got. Okay, just one more crankshaft to show you, and we'll wrap this guy up. I finally have the Hercules 6 crank finished, and this is 30/30, and it did clean up in 20, but my customer says that he could only get 30 bearings for the mains and 30 for the rods. I don't know why that is, but got to go with what he says. I don't know too much about the Hercules parts availability, but he did find 30 mains and 30 rods. So, oil holes are chamfered. It is polished up beautifully and exactly on size at 30/30. And the nice thing about this is when I got it, it was 10/10. The last guy that ground it did a perfect job. So I was able to set the stroke of 4 1/8, and I never had to touch it again. I indexed it. I was able to do this guy and this guy on one setup, this guy and this guy on another, and this guy and this guy down there. So it has mating journals, and that's kind of nice. And the last guy did a hell of a job, so I set the stroke at 4 1/8 and ground nose 30. And everything came into play just perfectly. It came out very nice. So crankshafts are flying off the machine, and let's see, Mark's engine, I know, let's go over here a little bit. Mark's engine is just about finished. Just got to put the head on and the pan. Larry's engine, I am working on the rods for you now, and then once the pistons go in, same thing, pan and the head. And so these two are going out next, and plenty more to get to. I've got a motor in from Lu. There is your M38 motor. I finally got it on a stand. Got that MB to do. I got the 6-cylinder. There's the crank for it. Travis, just about ready to bore you. Brian, boring has begun. And there's the Hercules. Just got to bore and sleeve that guy. So a lot going on here. And we're going to wrap that one up here. Again, if you have any questions about crankshafts, put a comment below and I'll get back with you. But I hope I covered all the questions you guys might have. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.